Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb, and today I am absolutely delighted to be joined here in the studio with Bin Ren from SigTech. Bin, how are you?
Toby, good to see you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, listen, lovely to have you here. I wanted to do this because we were on stage together, FinTech Connect, just before Christmas. We had a conversation that I loved, and I sort of tagged you in on LinkedIn the other day because it's been in my head ever since. And it's been in my head because I think this whole AI movement has been the buzz for the last couple of years, and it's about how do we make sure that does the game-changing opportunity to change productivity completely. Now, you put a little snippet in there which was talking about how the internet had come in many years ago, and the actual change in productivity globally didn't make us the move that potentially you think would have happened from such a game-changing piece of technology. When we look at AI, the buzz is all about productivity, efficiency gains, etc., etc. But is it going to be this thing which changes the world in the same sort of in the way it can do, or will things change and productivity stay the same? You've been in my head ever since that that time in December. We're here in January at the moment, and I wanted to share it with a much bigger audience than we could do just on that stage on that one day. So thank you so much, first and foremost, for coming in. We've got loads to crack into and all of that, lots of interesting things to cover. Before we do it, I always like to start with a bit of background. So, Bin, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us about SigTech as well.
Great. I studied computer science. I'm a computer scientist by education, and I started working on the sell side, doing quant strategies and equity exotics trading at Barclays Capital. And then I moved to the buy side, eventually running a systematic trading at Brown & Howard. SigTech was actually a spin-off from my team at Brown & Howard.
Yeah.
We built a lot of quant infrastructure for research and trading and Brevin. And then we wanted to focus on the tech we built because we felt it was really unique, very state-of-art, and really want to give it to...
And this was Alan backing you to do that?
Yes, Alan Howard, my biggest investor, and Brevin Howard is my biggest client. I love their support. We can't really do it without them. So we are getting the best tools into the professionals who are making investment decisions. The idea is, with the right tool, they can make more decisions, better decisions. So people and businesses that can, they are thriving, can get the capital they deserve. Essentially making the market more efficient. That's our kind of mission. Our mission is to make capital market more efficient. And that's a program that people need to be doing as well at the moment, doesn't it? Because we'll come on to efficiency in capital markets in a minute. That's right.
But that sort of general sort of theme of and I guess mantra of what you want to do, it oozes all the way through the very fabric of the company, right? Yeah,
that's right. Because I grew up in China, and it was a sort of socialist country. Now you can argue maybe China has its own version of the capitalism, which is probably even more efficient or brutal than the version here. But so I appreciate the importance of a market and the power, the role it plays in allocating resources to make the society prosper. So that's the very kind of a high calling for people working at SigTech. And everything we do, the tools we build, the software we write, the technology we build, it's all about helping people in the financial capital markets making better decisions, and so that the businesses that they invest in get the capital they deserve, at the price they deserve. That's all about.
And I've had the great pleasure of walking through various demos of the product, and it's extraordinary to look at. Tell me a little bit about the journey and the product journey of where you've come, because if we look about the evolution of AI on its own, we've just been talking since we last spoke, only a month or so ago, about things that have happened since in AI, subsequent to when we were talking last time. So with the evolution of AI, I imagine it becomes evolution of product. So how far away you are today from when you founded the company and first started to think about it? How's that developed over that time?
I think when we first started, our focus was a SaaS product. It's a web-based environment where people can use the data sets we have curated and use our quant framework that we have written to implement their ideas and test it and deploy it. So that was the main idea. And so over the years we grew mainly by adding new functionalities. So we support all the asset classes. We add more data sets. There are hundreds of data sets in our data lake. So people are working for hedge funds, asset managers, pension funds, actually around the world, starting to use what we offered. What really changed was 2 years ago, when generative AI came about. We realized that GenAI was able to be essentially trained almost like a user of our SaaS product. We can actually train an AI model to write the code, accessing the data, implementing ideas. So the human really just needed to express their ideas in natural languages, and the LLM can do a big part of it. So that's why we started to focus on exploring, can we leverage this new technology to broaden our user base? Can we get more people who actually cannot be very proficient in writing code to implement their ideas? Can we get those people to use what we offered? So that's how we got started. Now we started building a prototype like 2 years ago, and we have come such a long way.
Yeah.
Actually, it came such a long way that we give it a name called Magic.
I love the name as well. Tell us what Magic means as well.
Magic stands for Multi-Agent Generative Investment Copilot.
Love it.
Magic, and our philosophy is it's a team of AI agents who are specialists in different aspects of the capital markets, and they collaborate to solve problems on your behalf, so that a human user can focus on the more difficult, more creative parts of their jobs, essentially making one person into 10.
Yeah.
So that's our goal, because there's so much grunt work we have to do every day.
Yeah.
We love our job, but it doesn't mean we love every single minute of it.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that the 90% of the minute that we don't like, hopefully we can offload to our AI team.
I think that's an important thing to say about that, isn't it? Because I've spoken to Krishna, who runs your US operation, a lot about this. And Krishna's always been sort of very keen to say that, look, this will have efficiencies and change workforces. And I know he's very prolific on LinkedIn about this sort of matter, but it's about making sure you're taking out tasks that can make people more effective at their job.
Yes.
And creates a whole nother aspect of jobs elsewhere after it as well. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about. I also think it's important to talk about the fact of, and we alluded to this a lot when we were on stage in December, that there have been emperor's new clothes before in technology that seem to be transformative. We have had a narrative for the last 15, 20 years which has been talking about stagnating productivity and stagnating growth. The government at the moment is having to fend off accusations about stifling growth non-stop at the moment. So productivity with increasing cost, all the way through, which can't go through in inflationary matters all the way through. There has to be gains either through cost reduction, which can only go so far, or productivity gain. Now, as I said at the offset of this conversation, you spoke really eloquently about this, about the internet's advance and how that was going to revolutionise productivity. And it didn't have that same sort of impact. It obviously changed how everyone worked, but it didn't necessarily gain productivity from it. I had a conversation this morning where I was talking to a bunch of recruitment leaders, and they were talking about how many different tech stacks that we've all got now at the moment, but how many of them are actually gaining the productivity, or is it making it more complicated for people to actually do their job? And we should only invest in things that are going to make people more efficient and better.
Yeah. Now,
we spoke about this feeling and being different this time, and AI, coming in here will have a impact on productivity. Full stop. The Times article suggested it will do, but it might come a little bit later than people potentially anticipate. Tell us your view of this, because I think this is really interesting.
I think 2 days ago, Goldman Sachs CEO mentioned in an FT article, he said, in Goldman Sachs, now the S1 filing for IPO, 95% is already generated by AI within minutes. So his investment bankers, at least investment banker associates, just need to focus on that, the remaining 5%. Which means the same team can work on 20 times more deals. And that's coming from the Goldman Sachs CEO, and it's on record. I think that shows that there are certain use cases where we are seeing a dramatically improved productivities. Like 20x is no joke. It's actually incredible. I think the reason this time is different is because when we measure the productivity, we measure the productivity of the people. So when we invent a new technology, technology will replace some, obsolete technologies or processes, but people move on to learn new skills. So in terms of the efficiency of the skill, it doesn't improve as much because it's just people still need to learn new things. So the human is always tend to be the bottleneck. There's so much we can learn. If anything, there's maybe an argument for it's becoming more and more difficult for us to learn because there's so much to learn.
Despite the fact of it's making it as simple as possible all the way through as well. It's
that's
still
explosion in knowledge, and it's a challenge then for one to decide what to focus on. I think LLM is different because for the first time we have invented a technology that fundamentally captures what people call the illicit knowledge. Illicit knowledge is essentially what we normally say human intuition experiences. I think that directly changes how we work, because like using the S1 filing, for example, by distill the experience and knowledge of the investment bankers, they automate that part of the skills, and therefore people focus on the one that are less structured, less well defined, more creative. I think that's the first time the technology that directly affects how we work directly, complements our experiences and intuitions. I think that's why this time the improvement in productivity can be very dramatic. I think we've already seen it 20 times for investment bankers.
Well, this is exactly what I was going to say, that we are seeing it already in action. And I think the last couple of years have been characterized. I think every event that I've been to, every industry event I've been to, people have been espousing the sort of benefits and potential of AI and sort of putting AI behind their the name of their company to sort of make them an AI-based business, or they've been sort of bastardizing the word AI into actually what they're doing, which potentially isn't necessarily AI in its truest sense. So I think the one thing that we've been probably lacking over the last couple of years is when we've been hearing people talking about the potential of the technology, is actually seeing these use cases behind it. But now we're starting to get to that sort of phase. So talk to us a little bit about where you're seeing it in action and in practice.
Yeah, I think there are multiple areas of use cases. For example, drafting documents. And drafting documents is a pretty kind of broad category of works, right? Could be drafting legal document, drafting medical report, drafting investment banking PowerPoint. As long as I would say most of the documents we draft, maybe 10% is unique to that specific case. Most of the time it's quite kind of a standard boilerplate or based on some kind of a common knowledge base in the firm, right? And all we have to write it in a certain way to be in line with regulatory requirements. All this kind of structured, predictable, repeatable, but in some sense also quite free-form kind of a content creation is already largely can be automated by AI. So we're talking about, in addition to what we can talk about creative writing, we're talking about copywriting in marketing, all sorts of stuff. And then we are seeing a big
design alongside that as well.
That's right. That's right. And then we are seeing a big uptick in terms of just operational aspects. For example, we have heard firsthand that hedge fund managers, when they take investors' money, they have to fill in a form called DDQ. So the investor will say, hey, okay, we want to invest in your fund, please fill in this DDQ questionnaire. So if you have seen a DDQ PDF, it has about over 100 questions spread over tens of pages. And each investor has a different one. There's no standard. So when they send you this document, and then what people have to do is the COO and his team will spend like a week going through their internal documents that describe how they do business. And they use that knowledge base at the firm level to fill in the DDQ forms. It takes like a week, multiple people. So GenAI is being introduced as a way for them to essentially pre-fill the form, because as long as you build the knowledge base, this is how we do business, this is how we manage funds, these are our compliance handbooks and everything. And then they can actually pre-fill like 90%. of the form. So people just need to verify and fill in the rest. And suddenly, a whole week become half a day.
Yeah.
So we've seen that. And then the similar idea of leveraging firm level experience and knowledge base to pre-fill forms to do like customer onboarding, KYC check, KYB check, like fraud detections. I think it's all like very active, explored use cases.
I think it's quite interesting this as well, isn't it? Because as you're talking, I just think about human nature. Yeah, without question, it's a transformative thing, and it should be moving people into doing the key human work.
Yeah.
Within that, and but one of the things I've been seeing more and more of the digital, just the entitlement that the digital age has brought to us, where we've got expectations of doing things, and maybe this productivity thing is about people having to do less, and then sort of actually not taking the opportunity to do more because of it, but actually trying to do less alongside it. That's an interesting flaw, is it? Do you see where I'm going with that?
I think that's a fantastic philosophy.
Yeah.
It's actually a very deep question. So,
so we don't usually go deep.
I think if you think about I think ideally in an ideal world, a job doesn't feel like a job.
Yeah.
A job feels like something we enjoy.
Yeah.
Doing, that we have fun with.
Purpose and driven and
exactly.
In flow, yeah.
And I do believe each one of us have a calling.
Yeah.
I think in the current society, just the way the educational system, the whole system set up, is that we are not exactly encouraged to find out and pursue our callings. A person may be, super passionate about, creating music or films. But very early on in their, as they grew up, people will say, that's not going to make a good living, do something else. So I think even the education system can be described as encouraging people to make them more employable.
Yeah.
So, but if we can use generative AI to do a lot of the groundwork that people frankly don't enjoy doing, I think give every person in the society the capacity and the resources to go back and think, I want to live my life. I want to pursue a passion, a calling. I don't necessarily have to, do a job just to live. I think that changes many things, and I mean there are like societal level kind of impact. I think I'm honestly feel very privileged that this thing is happening in our lifetime.
Yeah, I mean that's underplayed, isn't it? When you look at the advances that we've seen over the last few years. Even in the last few decades, I think we'll probably sit there and probably be unaware of just how fortunate we are to be living right now. And everyone can go through and say, "Oh, this is difficult," or "There's this," and we're at the best time ever to have lived on this planet, I believe.
Yes.
And that is where I believe the potential has to come in from it, and why we're seeing all this evolution. So let's move back to the evolution. We were talking beforehand about the rise of AI agents in 2025. And how we sort of spoke a little bit earlier on about how this world is evolving at pace and various new things coming in all the time, and that pace of change has never been matched at any sort of stage in any industrial revolution or evolution at any sort of stage in history. So this is a highly malleable technology that moves apace, that morphs and changes the more it's being worked with. It creates more and more opportunity. So talk to us about the sort of rise of the upgrade to the AI agent.
I think last year Microsoft was the thought leader in promoting the adoption of GenAI in productivity enhancing use cases. And the way they describe it is as co-pilot. And I think it was a very cunning choice of word, because they were trying to position this as some kind of intelligent assistants who are not going to, fundamentally change how you do things, but it's nice to have, watching over your shoulders, always accessible to make you to give you some tips or help you do some, relatively trivial things. But they are very intentionally making not very threatening. Not very dramatic. It's a co-pilot. It's a buddy. And there's a buddy there to be helpful. I think very cunning. But this, starting from December, they completely changed the tune. They're not pushing agents. So agents is different from co-pilots because they are more autonomous. Agent is more like a colleague. you have a chat with a colleague.
Friendly language.
Friendly language, or you can tell this AI agent to speak to you in whatever colorful language you prefer. But you do describe what the job is, and the AI agent is able to go away and execute on it autonomously, and come back to you either with a response, answer, or ask for more guidance. So we are moving toward this more autonomous. So less of an assistant, but more of an autonomous colleague that we collaborate with. I think that's where we are going. And I think also for the first time, Microsoft is saying that by the end of this year, every firm will probably need to think about, if not already, embrace a hybrid workforce. And it will be a workforce of humans and AI agents.
Yeah.
So they're even thinking about some very interesting implications, such as the IT department will become an HR department. So the IT department managing this agent will somehow take on the human resource responsibilities.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Very interesting. So I think they're already throwing these big ideas out there, so to get people to learn
Think about it tomorrow. Yeah.
Think about it. I think that's where we're going. So think about AI agents as autonomous, intelligent colleagues that we will work with in collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because hybrid has obviously got it's been the whole work from home debate that's been raging for the last thing. But actually, that hybrid workforce of having man and machine working together, or human and machine working together, has probably caused a little bit of friction and fear, so far. And this to me feels like a movement of erasing that fear and trying to accept the potential and possibility instead. Would that be fair to say?
I think I think fear is very normal. Actually, there's if you go back in history and the fear for automation. I think there's a phrase called something like fear for automation. Actually happened multiple times in history, multiple times. But I think a good example would be Terence Tao, who is arguably the most accomplished and famous mathematician today. He is using the state-of-art large language models as a, quote, graduate school level PhD student to help him to work on mathematical problems. And he's already getting inspired by some of the proofs his AI models are able to generate.
Yeah.
And he actually he wanted to promote it to his fellow mathematicians. He gave like multiple hour-long presentations just to share his experiences, right? And I think we are seeing, these models becoming a daily, almost indispensable tools for people pushing the frontier of the human knowledge. They can be mathematicians, physicists, or people in the genetics, medical fields. I think maybe they're already pushing the frontier of knowledge.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, because technically large language models is amalgamation of all the knowledge we have created so far, but by the way they learn, by the way the models are trained, they can actually learn non-obvious cross-domain kind of parallels. I think that's why, in some sense, they are even more creative than we are.
Yeah.
They can find parallels in so many domains that we simply cannot, because we are not trained in many domains ourselves. But they are. So
we just have to add the context to it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think there are revolutions happening at all levels in many fields, whether in the industry, in the business, or in some fundamental research. And it's happening, but may not be visible just yet.
And just yet is the interesting thing, because as I say, going back to the thing of revolution and evolution, everything happened. There's obviously new models coming into OpenAI. What are we seeing there this year?
I think we spoke literally last time, a couple of weeks before OpenAI releasing a new generation of models. It's called O1, and now I think O3 is coming out in about 2 weeks. The reason they skipped O2 is because O2 was a trademark of the mobile operator. So they skipped O1 straight to O3.
So that's the lawyer. That's the AI lawyer coming into action, right?
That's right. They are very different because now the latest model, they are following a new kind of scaling law, because they have discovered that they can make the large language model think. So before O1 models, when we use something like ChatGPT, the AI model will give us a response almost instantaneously. It's literally just doing word by word predictions. It's like it's almost like saying thing without thinking. You know, it's like just saying out of intuition and gut feeling. So it's a very instinctive kind of response. Then they realized by making the model think, they can dramatically improve performance. And therefore, this new generation model, they're thinking. So when you ask a very complex question, it will actually take seconds, sometimes even minutes, you know, to think it through and give you an answer. And that answer, because they have thought it through, but by thinking, I mean they actually generate the response, review it, self-critique.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating sort of point of it. And with all that evolution, it's about, you know, coming back to that productivity piece we're talking about. Capital markets has been this area where I think there has been such a lack of development compared to other areas for various different reasons. You know, it's much more heavily regulated. We can sit there and bash the capital market space about its lack of adoption of technology. I've said on this show many times that, you know, cloud, for example, was the last bastion was capital markets, and it took a pandemic to really get it adopted before it was trusted and all. So we've had this natural distrust in capital markets for it. It's slowed down the adoption of you know, blockchain technologies, for example. You look at AI and the revolution it could have, or the scale of evolution it could have in capital markets. And how much more efficient capital markets can get, but there will still be this sort of lack of trust that sort of exists within it. And when you break down that trust and show the piece with it, I can tell you a conversation I've had with a couple of banking friends of mine who just talk about approximately right being the issue with AI. That whilst they see the benefit of it and they love playing around with it, they talk about the approximately right piece of it, which is their bugbear around it. And I worry that these shackles sometimes will do it. And you sort of alluded before we came into about a conversation that isn't really happening, which is today versus 15 years ago. In capital markets, we were even less efficient than we were that time past because of the changing of the guard and the changing of technology and the changing of and the reduction of headcount and everything else in between it with the advance of companies in public and listed domains. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this, because I think it's really interesting.
I feel like this is one of the least covered stories of our time, especially for people working in finance.
We broke it here first, right?
Yes, exactly, hopefully. You know, when we think about capital markets, it's so important, right? Because a very efficient capital market means businesses get the capital they deserve. A good business gets the capital they deserve easily at a cheaper price, and less good business get a different price. So that's how resource allocation happens. You know, this Adam Smith, you know, described as the invisible hand. You want the hand to be very efficient and effective. But if you think about 15 years ago compared to today there are far more public and private companies around the world. Thanks to the entrepreneurship, and people build businesses and sometimes take them public. But something dramatically multiple things have been happening in the last 15 years to make the market actually less efficient. The number one thing is because there are like explosion in the number of companies exists. There are far fewer people who actually cover them. I think Bloomberg came out with an article a few days ago talking about the demise of the equity analysts. You know, over the last 10 years, the number of equity analysts, I think, dropped from something like 100,000 to less than 50,000.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Minus 50%. And so there are 50% fewer people covering maybe 10 times more companies.
Because of cost reduction and...
That's a great question. It's like, why did it happen? Just because I think the investors over the last 10 years predominantly putting more and more capital into index tracker funds, passive investment funds, right? If you see the growth of the BlackRock, the Vanguard. So when you put it into a tracker, you don't need to understand companies. They don't care about companies, right? I think the biggest theme in the asset management business, the biggest trend in the last 10 years is like at the trillions. I think it's 10 trillion in the last 2 years, 20 trillion in the last 10 years, something like that, moving away from the actively managed mutual fund, essentially stock pickers, to passive investment fund like index trackers. Like we're talking about tens of trillions. So that's why, so previously, 15 years ago, all these mutual funds or hedge funds, they are stock pickers. They hire an army of analysts who are super well educated and well trained to analyze companies. What's a good business? What's a bad business? What can be turned around? That actually helping the business to grow and the price discovery to make the market efficient. But because of the shift in the capital to passive investment, there's less need for analysts. So it feed on itself. Then there are fewer companies that can be understood. Then people say, why bother? And therefore just, park your capital into an index tracker. And when people care about companies, they care now more about the biggest companies. Probably the Magnificent Seven is responsible for such a huge chunk of the Nasdaq and S&P 500 market cap. People realize that, you get more bang for your buck by analyzing these companies. I mean, Nvidia, they can go up like 50% a year, right? Then you can, because they're so big and they can generate so much return and it's so liquid. You can deploy billions of dollars into names like Nvidia, Meta, Google, Apple. You really get a lot of bang for your buck. Then, for example, compared to analyzing a small to medium cap company, it's illiquid. So let's just say you found some gems. And let's say you find 100 gems, and then you realize you can barely put like $5 million behind each name. And therefore you say, it's not worth my time. So we have this very weird dynamic. I think overall, this gap in terms of analytical power, covering the number of companies in the world, this gap is huge and it's growing. So I would argue this makes the capital market even less efficient.
Yeah.
So therefore, generative AI has to play a role and offer some kind of a solution here.
Well, it creates a solution, it creates a massive opportunity, and I guess this is where SigTech enters stage right? Together.
We are certainly very laser focused on looking at this.
Yeah.
Because obviously, talking about from a business point of view, talking about the total addressable market is huge.
Yeah.
Right. The very easy to think about is like, okay, there are like hundreds of thousands of companies, private and public. They are competing for capital, but they are not understood. And people don't have the capacity to analyze them. Therefore, they are starving for capital. Therefore, how we make that process and how to scale up. Like, for example, we are working with some commercial bank on reviewing their underwriting processes. We can literally increase the number of deals they look at by a factor of 3 or 4.
Wow.
Within a year. Then I think that changes how those businesses can grow and how the banks can more efficiently allocate their capital.
And this is an exciting year for you. Sort of, if it's not plain to see, I love your business. I think it's fascinating, the journey you've been on. I love the project you're doing. I love the people in your business are so passionate about what you're going. There's so much to be excited about SigTech. And I think it's definitely one to be keeping a very close eye on in 2025. So tell us about what the roadmap looks like for you guys. What can we expect to see from the company? I imagine innovation is right at the core of it. I imagine what we're saying now will be evolving in 6 months' time. It'll be evolving in 12 months' time as well. But what's the buzz coming out of the business at the moment?
I think currently we have multiple pilot projects with different kind of financial institutions, commercial banks, asset managers, really looking to deploy AI agents as a team, introduce them into their workforce and change how they change a lot of the current very essential business processes. And because when we see their staff working with AI agents in collaboration, actually the whole process cannot just be optimized. Actually, quite often can be redesigned, because a lot of the way we do business actually is based on this assumption that everybody are humans, right? But when you work with AI agents, who are, I like to say, they have some superpowers. They are very generalists. They understand multiple domains, and you can prompt them to behave like Warren Buffett or like Charlie Munger, and they can avoid quite a lot of human biases, and they don't have a psychological issue.
Yeah.
and they work 24/7.
Yeah.
They don't take holidays. They
What's not to love?
what not to love. They don't play golf, and they can work in parallel.
Neither do you, though. So
Well, golf is not for me. It's too hard. Each agent can run in multiple copies. So when we say you have a team, let's say a team of 12 agents, but each agent can run in basically infinite number of copies. So the scale up in terms of the possibilities is really quite unbelievable. So we are starting with these pilot projects to deploy AI augmented or amplified processes, but very quickly I think we'll move on to revisiting the process from first principles. I think businesses we traditionally consider to be a slow growing or growing low teen or single digit businesses potentially can see some unprecedented tech-like growth rate. I think that's what really gets us excited. We want to be focused on the technology we build, but so we constantly look for the best opportunities to deliver the outsized value to our customers.
Yeah.
I think those case studies can become examples to educate and inspire other firms to take the similar approach.
Ben, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the show. Everything I hoped it would be and more. It's always fascinating to talk to you, and we could be talking for a lot longer. But I wanted to wrap up just by saying that people are watching this. I think this is a conversation that wherever we go, people want to be talking about it, and they want to be speaking to the best people in the industry about thoughts in it. I know there's going to be people here who are recognising some of the opportunities within that and want to reach out and find out more about SigTech. What's the best way for them to do that and get in touch with you?
I think go to our website or LinkedIn page, sigtech.com, and get in touch.
Fantastic. Been absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much,
Toby.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.